If you would, go ahead and open up your Bibles to 2 Samuel chapter 7. 2 Samuel chapter 7. We're going to be talking about the House of Cedar in chapter 7. We'll look at the first few verses here, and we're going to look at David's plan. David's plan. Look at verses 1 through 3 with me. And it came to pass, when the king dwelt in his house, and Jehovah had given him rest from all his enemies round about, that the king said unto Nathan the prophet, See now, I dwell in a house of cedar, but the ark of God dwelleth within curtains. And Nathan said to the king, Go do all that is in thy heart, for Jehovah is with thee. Now, I want to make mention of several things here. Of course, growing up, I did not realize at all this significance of the House of Cedar. One, of course, this would have been a very special construction. It would have been an expensive construction. It actually probably would have been also a difficult construction. But having a house of cedar means something even more favorable for the inhabitants of it. I know that there's throughout time people have built cedar closets. And what's the reason for a cedar closet? Well, bugs don't like to go into cedar areas. And so you will have much less bugs in a cedar house. And so he's got this house. It's a nice house. Well, then, he's thinking about this. He says, I've got this house of cedar. And then here it is. God has no house to dwell in. And so I'm going to build a house for God. And now he's talking to Nathan. And Nathan, the prophet, just says, do whatever's in your heart. Now, if you're thinking about from Nathan's perspective, Nathan is very much on David's side. David has been a righteous king, for the most part. He's done the things that are right and good. And evidently, God is on his side, as you see throughout his time already. God is blessing David and doing things for David that he didn't do for Saul. And so Nathan just immediately just says, hey, yeah, go ahead. Do whatever is in your heart to do it. Go ahead and do it. Well, we're going to find out that that's not exactly the right information given. But let's look at the following verses here in verses 4 through, 4 through 17. Look at verses 4 through 17 with me. We'll have to stop and make some comments as this is a large section. But verse 4, And it came to pass the same night that the word of Jehovah came unto Nathan, saying, Go and tell my servant David, Thus saith Jehovah, Shalt thou build me a house for me to dwell in? For I have not dwelt in a house since the day that I brought up the children out of Israel out of Egypt, even to this day, but have walked in a tent and in a tabernacle. And so the question immediately arises here, why do I need a house? Why do I need a house? I haven't dwelt in a house yet. I've been dwelling in tents so far, right? Verse 7, In all the places wherein I have walked with all the children of Israel, spake I a word of any of the tribes of Israel, whom I commanded to be shepherd of my people Israel, saying, Why have ye not built me a house of cedar? So God begs the question here. He says, hey, out of all this time that they've been carrying around the ark, at what point in time did I say, hey, why in the world have y'all not built me a house of cedar yet? It doesn't say that at all, right? Verse 8, Now therefore thus shalt thou say unto my servant David, Thus saith Jehovah of hosts, I took thee from the sheepcote, from following the sheep, that thou shouldest be prince over my people, over Israel. And I have been with thee whithersoever thou wentest, and have cut off all thine enemies from before thee, and I will make thee a great name, like unto the name of the great ones that are in the earth. And I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, that they may dwell in their own place, and be moved no more. Neither shall the children of wickedness afflict them any more, as at the first. And as from the day that I commanded judges to be over my people Israel, and I will cause thee to rest from all thine enemies. Moreover, Jehovah telleth thee that Jehovah will make thee a house. So, the God is responding back, telling Nathan through this vision, telling Nathan, listen, I want you to tell David this. I have not asked for a house. I don't really need a house. But if you want a house, I'm going to give you a house. I'm going to give you a big house. I'm going to build you a house. He's wanting to build God a house. God says, I'm building you a house. And then he's going to describe this here in just a second. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say that the next few verses are verses that sometimes people don't quite understand. You'll see people in the denominational world quoting this in different ways. But I'm going to tell you there's a really nice and easy way to understand the next few verses. So let's look at them together. Verses 12 through 14 in particular. When thy days are fulfilled, so of course when your life is over, when thy days are fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, I will set up thy seed after thee, that shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. Okay, so, first and foremost, what we're going to see here is there is kind of a twofold prophecy here. You have an immediate context of this as being Solomon, but then you're going to have a future context that is very obvious in Christ. You're going to have twofold, and you're going to see that, spelled out here in just a second. But when we're looking at this passage, when we look at verse 12 there, and if you like to write in the margin of your Bible, write some of these verses down. We're going to go to several verses. But right next to verse 12, write Acts chapter 2, 29 and 30. Because it says this, Brethren, I may say unto you freely of the patriarch David that he both died and was buried, and his tomb is with us unto this day. Being therefore a prophet, and knowing that God had sworn an oath to him, that of the fruit of his loins he would set one upon his throne. And so, what is he saying? Who is this person that's being talked about here? It's actually not Solomon in particular. This is talking about Christ. Now, if David just were thinking about this, he would say, okay, I'm about to have a son. And now, throughout his days, he could have even thought, well, you know what, I've got a son, and he's going to have this kingdom, and it's going to be his, and it's going to be strong, but there's going to be aspects of his kingdom that don't fit with an earthly ruler. And so let's continue to look at some of this. So verse 13, it says, He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom for how long? Forever. So you think that any king in his kingdom is going to reign forever? Not on this earth, right? Not on this earth. And so there are several passages I'd like to mention here. And these I have them marked in my margins of my Bible. Matthew 16 and verse 18 is the first one. I say unto thee that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. This is this eternal kingdom that is going to be built. In 1 Timothy 3 and verse 15, but if I tarry long, that thou mayest know how men ought to behave themselves in the house of God, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and the ground of truth. Now, you go back to Daniel chapter 2 and verse 44, and you're going to see some other things concerning this kingdom. And in the days of those kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, nor shall the sovereignty therefore be left to another people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. There's going to be a kingdom that lasts forever, and this is, of course, a prophecy of what? The church. And whose kingdom is that? It's Christ's kingdom. In Luke 1 and verse 33, and he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there shall be no end. Speaking, of course, of Jesus again and the church. In Hebrews 12 and verse 28, wherefore receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us have grace whereby we may offer service well-pleasing to God with reverence and awe. There's nothing that is going to destroy this kingdom. And so, he shall build a house for my name. So going back to this, he shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. Man, I love stuff like this, because when you look at the Bible, you just get this 365-degree view of, everything, just 360 degrees of everything. It's just awesome. Just see everything all at once, right? But verse 14 says, I will be his father, and he shall be my son. If he commit iniquity, I will chasten him with the rod of men, and with the stripes of the children of men. Okay, so here's a twofold thought process here. Now we know these other verses are going with Jesus. Now we come and look at this, and there's a glaring problem if you're only thinking one-sided. And what is that? If he has iniquity. If he has iniquity, if he has sin, I'm going to chasten him. Well, what happens with Solomon? When Solomon is in sin, God chastens him with men. Other kingdoms come, and he has to fight with these other kingdoms. But the rod of men and the stripes of the children of men. Now, go over to Hebrews 4 and verse 15. It says, "For we have not a high priest that cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but one that hath been in all points tempted like as we are, yet" what? "Without sin." So you think about this. You think about this directly with Solomon. Solomon, he is, he is going to be a follower of God. He shall be his son. And if he commit iniquity, well, you know what? God is going to chasten him. He's going to chasten him with the rods of men. Now, you think about this in this twofold purpose. Solomon would be chastened for his sins. Christ, on the other hand, is chastened for other men's sins. Solomon deserves what he gets. Christ puts on those iniquities to himself because he is the perfect sacrifice and is trying to save everyone. All right, moving on. "But my loving kindness shall not depart from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away before thee. And thy house and thy kingdom shall be made sure forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever. According to all these words and according to all this vision, so did Nathan speak unto David." And so Nathan tells him all these things. All this has been given to him, and David hears it. Now here's David's response. His response comes in the form of thanksgiving. David has some thanksgiving for God in reference here to 18 through the end of this chapter. All right. "Then David the king went in and sat before Jehovah, and he said, Who am I, O Lord Jehovah? And what is my house that thou hast brought me thus far? And this was yet a small thing in thine eyes, O Lord Jehovah, but thou hast spoken also of thy servant's house for a great while to come, and this too after the manner of men, O Lord Jehovah." So, you can kind of see, there's a little bit of disappointment here. David wants to do this, but yet what does he say? Well, how can I argue with you? I can't argue with you over this. And look at what you've said for me. You've said more blessings upon me than what I could have ever thought possible, right? All right, verse 19, or verse 20 rather. And what can David say more unto thee? For thou knowest thy servant, O Lord Jehovah. For thy word's sake, and according to thine own heart, hast thou wrought all this greatness to make thy servant know it. Wherefore thou art great, O Jehovah God, for there is none like thee, neither is there any God besides thee, according to all that we have heard with our ears. And what one nation in the earth is like thy people, even like Israel, whom God went to redeem unto himself for a people, and to make him a name, and to do great things for you, and terrible things for thy land before thy people, whom thou redeemest to thee out of Egypt from the nations and their gods. And thou didst establish to thyself thy people, Israel, to be a people unto thee forever, and thou, Jehovah, becamest their God. And now, O Jehovah God, the word that thou hast spoken concerning thy servant, concerning his house, confirm thou it forever, and do as thou hast spoken. And let thy name be magnified forever, saying, Jehovah of hosts is God over Israel, and the house of thy servant David shall be established before thee. For thou, O Jehovah of hosts, the God of Israel, hast revealed to thy servant, saying, I will build thee a house. Therefore hath thy servant found in his heart to pray this prayer unto thee. And now, O Lord Jehovah, thou art God, and thy words are truth, and thou hast promised this good thing unto thy servant. Now therefore let it please thee to bless the house of thy servant, that it may continue forever before thee. For thou, O Lord Jehovah, hast spoken it, and with thy blessing let the house of thy servant be blessed forever. Now, you look at all this, and there is more forevers mentioned here. he's being blessed forever. And how so? How so? Well, going back into this, Jesus is going to come. And exactly which line does Jesus come through? It's through David's line here. He is of David's lineage. And so, yeah, this is fulfilled in Christ. Remember, who is going to reign forever? It's going to be Christ, who fulfills all this right here. So, David is going to is thankful to God for all that he's done, for the blessings that God has given to him already, the blessing that he has now pronounced upon David. And there's so much that we could talk about here just alone in the sense of thankfulness. When God does anything for you, how thankful you ought to be. And, there have been times where, I thought that, something was going to work out and it didn't work out. And at the time, I was, kind of bummed about it, But afterwards, I realized, okay, so there was a much better deal going on, and I just did not realize it. I remember there was one work I looked at, and I thought, man, actually this happened a few times where I've looked at a work and I thought, this is a good fit. This is a good fit for me. And there's one work where I went and preached, and people were just lining up out the door and saying, hey, we really want you to come here. We really want you to come here. We really want you to come here. And then I talked to the elders. Everything seemed fine, and yet, they found another guy. And, I think about that, and I go, well, if I had taken those opportunities, the blessing of being here wouldn't have been possible. And I tell you what, I love the blessing of being here. I love the blessing of the brethren here. And so, there's things that you just don't see. And maybe it is that you think, well, this is perfect. This is perfect. Not so, says God. God knows what you need, and God's going to take care of you. Now, there are some lessons that are learned here. And let's think about a few of these things as we close out our thoughts. Number one, don't get mad at God and his commandments. David says, you know what, I'm going to build a house for you, God. And then God says, no, you're not. You're not going to do that. Now, what would happen to the average person if they thought, they've been reprimanded, sort of, What are they going to do? Oh, really? I'm just trying to do a good thing for you, okay? I'm just trying to do something nice. And then you come back and tell me no? Like really? That's how some people would react to this. But what does David do? Hey, whatever you say, Lord. Whatever you say. I'm with you all the way. If you say no, I thank you. I won't do that. And he puts this blessing back here. So we don't get mad at God. We don't get mad at God when he says no. We shouldn't get mad at God with his general commandments either. There are times when, we get up and as, preachers and teachers, we have to say the truth. And sometimes the truth makes people mad. We're not trying to make people mad. I know sometimes people think that that's what is going on. I don't want to make anybody mad. I'd sure like for everybody to like me if I could help that. But you know what? The truth has to be taught. We have to teach the truth. And so, sometimes it's going to upset people. Well, this same principle applies. Don't get mad at God for his commandments. Don't do that. Just go with it because God has said it and you should just follow it. All right, next one. Only God knows the future. This is pretty, I love when these things happen. Some are even more significant than others, and really, there's more that are more significant than this one, but I still think this is pretty cool because, talking about Solomon, and yet, is Solomon born yet? I mean, all this is given to him. God knows the future. God knows what's going to happen before it ever happens. God knows before anybody's ever born what's going to happen with them. And God knows that all these things are going to line up. And I tell you what, I just can't help but just wonder at that. That just how amazing that is. It's just so amazing that God can do that. None of us can do that. We can give our best guess at stuff, and we can think, we might know a person really well and think that they're going to do this, that, or the other, and yet sometimes you'll get surprised, right? Not so with God. God knows everything. God knows the future. And so let's trust in the one who knows what's going to happen. Let's trust in God. Let's not trust in anybody else. Let's not trust in riches. Let's not trust in the government. Let's trust in the only one who knows everything. Blessings will come when you obey. David doesn't pitch a fit about this. He just goes right along with it. Says, okay, you know what? You're right. I'm not going to do that. But then in this whole thought process, God says, I don't need a house, but you know what? I'm going to build you a better house. And you think about what David has done. He has shown that his love for God is deep. You know what? He's looking at his own house and he's saying, you know what? Why doesn't God have a house like this? God should have a nice house. That's what he's thinking. And, maybe his thought process is a little off here, but he says, look, I've got a nice house. God should have nice things, right? But you know what? The things that we can give to God are just pale in comparison to what God can give to us, right? God can do everything. So blessings come when we obey. And so here's the question for you tonight. Are you being obedient to the Lord? Have you been doing exactly what he has said? Have you been following his word? Have you become a Christian? If you've yet to become a Christian, we'd love to sit down and study with you on that regard and be able to help you out in making that good decision. And if you have become a Christian but you've not been faithful, then make things right with the Lord. There's no reason to leave this place without being right with God. If you need this invitation, it is yours. Please come as we stand and as we sing.